Hey there, Blip here, and today for you guys I have the start of something very special. This video is going to be telling you everything you need for preparation and getting your character perfectly ready for Mythic raiding and Mythic Plus as well. And it's going to give you all that important information so you can just show up to raid with all the stuff you're going to learn in this video and be ready to perform the best you can on a Fire Mage. Now this video isn't going to cover your rotation and your combustion like timers and stuff like that, because that stuff would make this video too long, and instead I'm going to make an Academy series where in every different episode I'm going to go over different things about Fire Mage rotation and combustion that will help you get a really good understanding of Fire Mage and allow you to perform at a very high level. Now these videos will be coming out over the next couple of days and weeks, so be sure to keep up to date with the channel. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see that stuff. We're going to be covering all sorts of tips and tricks that I think are really going to help a lot of people. Like even myself, I learned a lot from making these videos. It helps me understand the class better as well. And yeah, it should be a really interesting thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So first I'm going to go through the talent choices and showing you the mage build in general, why it makes Fire Mage so good right now. So first of all, we're playing a 1-minute combustion build, which all these talents are going to play into to make your combustions very strong, and in general it's just a really strong build that you will see pretty much used in all forms of content. A few slight changes might be needed here and there, but otherwise you should be fine. So to start with, we're going to be playing Searing Touch on the first row, simply because it's an amazing talent that does good damage, and it also really helps you in execute phases, making you fully mobile to help out on mechanics, and in general the last 30% of a boss is always the most important. Firestarter is a good choice on some fights, but this tier hasn't been seen in much use other than one boss, which I'll tell you about later, but Firestarter is a decent choice. Pyromaniac is a really awful talent that needs complete reworking in my opinion, because it just is fundamentally flawed. In the 25 row we have Blazing Soul, Shimmer and Blast Wave. These two are kind of niche, and you'll only ever see Blazing Soul taken if there's like a fight you can blink out of a stun, which is very rare. So Shimmer is going to be a default choice here. Blast Wave is really niche again, and it's a global and it's not really doing anything that other CC classes can't do. So Shimmer is the choice here, and it's really useful for all mobility purposes and not losing damage when you have to move with mechanics. On the 30 row we're going to be playing Arena Power. There's no contest here. Focus Magic and Incanter's Flow give you more damage outside your combustion. Arena Power is giving you more damage inside your combustion, and we do no damage outside of our combustion, so Arena Power is the best choice here. On the 35 row, again Flame On is going to be the choice here. This is because it has a really good synergy with one of our Conduits I'll go into more about later, and in general it's just really nice for our combustion damage. Again, it's giving us more hot streaks and more stuff to work with here. And also because we're having more Fire Blast throughout the duration of a fight, it's going to help our Kindling talent I'll get to later, and it's just a really good talent. Alexstrasza's Fury is a decent one in Mythic Plus, but it's not good enough to ever take over Flame On. Flame On is just way too good to be true right now. From the Ashes is really undertuned, and you will really never see this played, unless it's like a really niche fight where you want to spread your Ignite frequently. But again, since we do no damage outside of combustion anyway, you don't really need your Phoenix Flames for spreading Ignite outside of combustion. On the 40 row we have Frenetic Speed. You'll be taking this in pretty much all situations because it synergizes really well with Searing Touch. It's really nice to give you that movement speed in the execute so you can do more things. And then the other choices are really niche and only used like when you need to CC trash or packs or other things. On the 45 row we have, to be honest, a more diverse choice, but Living Bomb has been nerfed into the ground where you'll never really see it used anymore, because on the situations it's good they don't exist anymore, and Flame Patch is just doing way more for you in those situations where Living Bomb used to excel at. Conflag is your go-to single target choice because it's just something that does damage while you're doing a single target rotation, but as soon as you start using a few Flame Strikes in a fight, Flame Patch quickly overtakes Conflag because it doesn't do much damage and becomes the better choice. In Mythic Plus you'll always be playing Flame Patch regardless of anything else, and Conflag is the most of the time taken raid option apart from a few fights which I'll tell you about later again. In the 50 row right now we are not taking Pyroclasm or Meteor. Pyroclasm could see use later on in the expansion, but for right now Kindling is way too strong and the Pyroclasm is a bit niche and isn't very good. Pyroclasm normally becomes better when Firestarter is the best talent, but since Firestarter isn't the best talent, Pyroclasm is not as good as it could be. Meteor was always a good choice as well, but since we're playing 1 minute combustion to line up with our PvP trinket if you have one, and in general the 1 minute combustion is really nice, we're going to be playing with Kindling here. Kindling is what makes this whole build work. It's going to give us more arena powers because we're going to have more combustions, and whenever we activate combustion we're going to spawn arena power underneath us. So Kindling is by far the best choice in this row in all content. Meteor is something you can take in PvP if that's your type of content. Otherwise I would always play Kindling in whatever content you're doing. Okay, so now we're going to go into your Covenant choice. Now, for your Covenant choice, unfortunately if you're not playing Night Fae, you're in a bit of a predicament, because this build is really strong for Fire Mage because the Night Fae Covenant is really good as well. The Night Fae Covenant is going to give us a reducing cooldowns, and since we have so many cooldowns as a Fire Mage, we have Combustion, Rune of Power, we have our Blazing Barrier even as a defensive, we have Phoenix Flames, Fire Blast, Meteor if you're playing that, we're not, but you get the picture. We have a lot of cooldowns that benefit from the reduction of shifting power, that it becomes extremely good for Fire Mage. So good in fact that it just outshines everything, especially in AoE situations, because shifting power is really good at giving you more charges towards the end of your combustion, and it does a lot of damage as well. So if you're not playing Night Fae and you want to do well as a Fire Mage, I strongly suggest you reroll to Night Fae as soon as possible, because honestly you're missing out on so much, and as soon as you swap to Night Fae you'll definitely feel a difference, I promise you. Otherwise, Venthyr is an okay choice. Venthyr is not bad. You can make good use of it on some fights, but you'll never really see it because Night Fae just outperforms it in pretty much every situation. Kyrian again is okay, but it just, as you start going down the list it just gets worse, and then you finally get to the Necrolord, which is, if you're playing Necrolord, unfortunately you're going to suffer a lot. It's really bad for Fire Mage, and I don't really see anyone playing with it. Now for your Soulbind choice. Now your Soulbind choice is quite interesting here. So the Dreamweaver is currently the best for every Fire Mage in the game because we have 2 potency slots, and the Fire Mage Conduits are actually pretty good for us, especially Infernal Cascade, which I'll talk about more later. As the time goes on and we start unlocking more pathways in our Soulbinds, eventually Nia will become the best Covenant for us because she has pretty good Soulbinds, and she also has this interrupting one which is really good sim DPS wise on single target. Now keep that in mind. This means that you're going to have 100% uptime on this, and you have to remember, if you're competing with other people's interrupts, the reality is it's going to be really hard to have actually high uptime on this. So don't get baited by this Covenant. It may be better in Mythic Plus and some other situations where this Mastery buff is helping you out. Otherwise, I don't think anyone will be playing Nia. There may be a few good logs where you see it because they're able to get all the interrupts they want, but otherwise, this is not going to be a very reliable Covenant choice. However, Corian, when we unlock this guy after finishing the Night Fae campaign, is going to be extremely good because he has some really good Soulbind choices for us. He has obviously, and he has 2 really good Soulbind choices for us, so this guy is definitely going to become the best Covenant once you fully unlock the whole tree. Otherwise, Dreamweaver is the best for now. Nia is technically the best if you're able to get these interrupts off 24/7, but even then, honestly, I would say Corian is just way better, probably for Mythic Plus as well. So as soon as you get this guy fully unlocked, you're going to swap to him. Otherwise, Dreamweaver is the best for now, as we have double conduit, double potency conduits unlocked. And then also the Pot Tender is really nice for progress rating, and you've seen a few cheesy uses of it in PvP as well. So Dreamweaver is a really solid choice. Now for the conduits you're going to be playing. So for Fire Mage right now, the best conduit we can play is Infernal Cascade. Now Infernal Cascade is going to give you more combustion damage whenever you Fire Blast within it, up to 25% right now for this 200 item level one, and that is going to make your combustions hit really hard. And if you can get this higher item level than 200, it starts becoming really good. I think I'm getting like 60 DPS per 13 item levels on this right now, so that's pretty insane. It's definitely the best conduit in the game compared to every other class in my opinion. And it's also just really what makes Fire Mage so strong. So whenever you have this, whenever you're playing Fire Mage, you'll always be playing with Infernal Cascade. So make sure you always have this slotted no matter what content you're doing. Now after that, our second potency choice, it becomes a bit more, complex, because Discipline of the Grove is the best simming and best all-round Covenant choice here, conduit choice, because it's going to give you a lot more cooldown reduction, and it's going to mean you can get your 1-minute combustions more reliably if you get unlucky on critical strikes. Controlled Destruction is very good in PvP because it's going to give you more Pyroblast damage, and it's going to allow you to pop off quite hard. Also in raids it's also seen some use because there's some fights where the cooldown reduction of shifting power isn't really helping you. For example, if you know you're going to have to hold your combustion a few times anyway, the power blast damage would be way more useful than the cooldown reduction. But controlled destruction, even my 226 one I have here, seems less than Discipline of the Grove. And you see most mages playing with Discipline of the Grove. So controlled destruction is really a niche choice where it really depends on your kill timers and other things with your combustion. So Discipline of the Grove is the default choice with Infernal Cascade. I have it locked in right now because I was doing some PvP. In Mythic Plus, however, you're going to be wanting to play Master Flame in M+. Now, this is going to give your Flame Strike more damage, and your Flame Strike is doing a lot of damage in M+. It makes us really strong, especially in uncapped AoE. So you're going to be playing both Infernal Cascade and Master Flame. But in some dungeons, like Theatre of Pain for example, I would say the extra Flame Strike damage might not be as welcome because it's not really a dungeon where you can pull too big. And, you know, on a Tyrannical week, for example, Discipline of the Grave I think would be a better choice. But in general, you want to be playing Infernal Cascade and Master of Flame and Mythic Plus. Otherwise, Infernal Cascade and Discipline of the Grave is always your go-to choice. If you're ever unsure, just have those two socketed. I'm not going to go into the defensive choices because they honestly don't matter that much. You can just pick whatever you feel is best for you. I'm playing with the Ice Block healing because I was playing some Rogue Mage in PvP. So now we've got that stuff out of the way, let's get into your enchants and the gear you want to have equipped. So to start with, we'll start with the enchants. Now, this is also going to cover your stat priorities. So your character is not going to be the same as mine in terms of stat priorities. Some of you are going to want more haste, some of you are going to want more crit, and so on. For me right now, my character always sims a really high haste until I have about as much as you see on screen right now. As soon as I drop to like 640, 30 in lower haste, my haste skyrockets in value, and lower item level gear quickly becomes better just because of how much value that haste is giving me. So always keep that in mind whenever you're simming your character, because I think this is the same for most mages. But remember, your character is not the same as mine. Your sims will be slightly different, and you should always sim. Go find the guide on how to sim if you don't know how to do that, and check your stat weights to make sure you're always going for the right stats. So for me in general, I think haste is the best by far, but now it's starting to lose value at this level of haste, so I'm starting to get some more crit. I would love a bit more mastery if I could get some, and verse is like something that you want to build as well. Otherwise, yeah, it's haste is your main stat until a certain amount, and then crit, mastery, and verse. Sim those to see which is best for you, and then focus on that. So as you can see here, I have haste enchants on my rings just to push me over that haste threshold I was talking about. I'll soon have more sockets on my gear as well, which then I can use to re-gem and put into other stats. On my cloak enchant, you should be playing the plus 20 stamina and plus 10 avoidance because it's really good for raiding. The 10 avoidance adds up a lot over a fight and becomes more worth than the 10 extra stamina. It will save the healers a bit of mana. On your chest, you're going to be using Eternal Insight. It's just the best enchant for Fire Mage in general, and everyone is playing it at the moment. On your wrist, you want your plus 15 Intellect enchant. And on your weapon, this is probably the more controversial choice, but I think in general, most of the high-end mages agree that Celestial Guidance is the best choice, because Sinful Revelation, the other choice you have, is where you're just going to buff a random enemy for 6% damage taken increased by your spells. But you have to keep in mind that on pure single target, yes, it does sim higher and it's reliable because it's only proccing on one target. As soon as you add any more targets to the fight, there is a chance your Sinful Revelation could proc on a different target. If that happens as a mage, Fire Mage, you're screwed because you need to tunnel into one target. That's how your damage works. As soon as it procs on another target, you might not be able to focus them because you don't want to put your combustion into that target, for example. Celestial Guidance is just reliable, it's a buff on yourself you gain, and it's just really useful as soon as more targets are added into the fight. So in general, I would say Celestial Guidance is the more consistent and better performing enchant. But on fights like Sludge Fist, where you need extra damage and it's pure single target, that's where Sinful Revelation is going to be ahead. But otherwise, I would always play Celestial Guidance, and I'm only going to enchant Sinful Revelation specifically for Sludge Fist. Otherwise, that's all for the enchants. Now for your gear. So in general, the rule of thumb is that if you can get this badge from PvP, you should get it. It's really good for Fire Mage because it has a 1-minute cooldown, giving you a lot of main stat, more than a potion even, which is insanely good for your combustion windows, and I'm pretty sure every mage has it. The only thing that gets outperformed by this on single targets is the Denathrius Trinket. The Denathrius Trinket does do better than the badge for Fire Mage. But that's only if you, like if I have a 226 one here and the Mythic one is the only one that sims above this, the Heroic one does not. but not all of you are going to be able to get 2261, so keep that in mind. That maybe the Heroic Denethrius trinket is better, but that's only for single target. As soon as you're cleaving your ignite and you want to build up bigger ignites, and if you have a high level of mastery, for example, then the badge becomes more and more better, especially in Mythic Plus. You're always going to want to have a badge because the extra intellect is giving you a lot more damage on your spells. For your other trinket, currently I'm using the Soul Igniter. It's a very good trinket, and I recommend you checking out a video I made recently about the Soul Igniter and how you use it now. And I also have another video up on it soon because I feel like it's changed a bit, but otherwise, Soul Igniter is a really decent trinket. But as soon as, like, on a fight like Cancel Blood, for example, where there's 3 targets and they don't, it's not beneficial to hit more than 1 target, then it becomes a really bad trinket because you're only getting 33% of the damage on the target that counts towards your total damage. So in that regards, it's kind of bad. I don't really have another trinket to replace it with, but it's a really good trinket that works well with our fire damage increase from our Combustion, Infernal Cascade, so that's why I'm playing with it. You could easily replace it with pretty much all of the other trinkets in the raid if you wanted to. Like the Artificer trinket is not bad, for example. I've seen a lot of success with that. And then there's people playing with the Cavalist Timnel for more crit, it means they can, put their stats into other things than crit, and then they have enough crit to get their combustion timers up quickly. They're playing with Dreadfire Vessel as well as a secondary trinket. It's pretty good for single target. You just don't use it with your combustion. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend getting the Macabre sheet music because it's not very good for Fire Mage. There is some success with it in AoE situations, but otherwise I wouldn't take this trinket if I was you. Otherwise, that's all for the trinket choices. You just want to get whatever highest item level weapon you can get your hands on most of the time, because the main stat on these is ridiculous. It's like 70 DPS for every 6 item levels on the weapon. That's insane. And then for your legendary choice, I'm just going to go through a few of these options for you now. So first we have Feathered Incantation, okay? This is your best legendary right now because you're combusting so frequently that this damage increase is just really useful, and also helps you in your Scorch phases, and in general we just crit so much that it's just such a good performing legendary. Firestorm was the go-to legendary at first week when we didn't have access to Feathered Incantation yet, but it's kind of fallen off. There are some people that are able to perform with it, but it's very RNG and not consistent compared to Incantation. So everyone is playing Incantation. Some people are playing Firestorm, and then plus it's seen a lot of success there as well. If you get procs, you can really pop off and do a lot of damage. Otherwise, Feathered Incantation is the go-to choice. Temporal Warp had potential to be a very good legendary in this expansion, and it still has the potential in the next tiers. But the reason it's not played right now is because in the Mythic, there are basically 0 fights that you lust and pull except from maybe 2. And that's causing this legendary to lose value, because if you're not lusting and pull, then you're not able to ever use Time Warp, because you have to have the Sated debuff first before you can use this, which makes it kind of bad. So yeah, but keep an eye on this legendary because it's something that could become very good later on. The other legendaries are pretty garbage. Some people play with Disciplinary Command, but it's fallen off a lot lately and I don't see anyone playing it anymore. Otherwise, yeah, you want to be crafting Feathered Incantation, and you can craft it in your head or waist slot. I really sincerely, if you're planning on raiding for a long time and you know you're going to be able to get 226 pieces in your waist and head slot, craft it in your head slot, because that's where you're going to get the most main stat from having those extra 10 item levels more than your waist, and it's just a better slot in general to have a legendary, because as I said, you're getting more value from those 10 item levels than if you were to have it in your waist. And you get a waist quite early on, a really good one as well from Artificer. So head is for sure the best place to craft this. I put crit haste on mine because I know haste is always going to be valuable to an extent, and then I like having crit for more kindling reduction, so those are the stats I chose. I would say always put haste on this, but if your gear is different to mine, maybe you want to put something else, but otherwise haste is a really good choice, and your secondary choice you can choose whatever you want. Otherwise I would put it in your head, but if you're if you really have a low item level waist and a really high item level head and you just want an upgrade straight away, you can craft it in your waist, but in the long run I think you're really going to benefit more from crafting it in your helmet slot. Okay, so now to the consumables you're going to want in the raid and for Mythic Plus as well. Now I'm sorry about the mess my bags are, and for the Illuminati of Santa hats, please ignore those, I hope they don't distract you too much. Otherwise, let's have a look at the consumables you're going to be using real quick. So for your potion, you're going to be using the Spectral Intellect potion simply because they're the best for our class. They seem a lot better and do a lot better than the Phantom Fire potions that you've probably seen around, because our combustions are so impactful, and having intellect potions for them just really amplifies our damage by a fair margin. So everyone is playing Spectral Intellect there. For Mythic Plus as well, you want Intellect potions of course. As soon as you switch to AoE, Intellect becomes insanely valuable, so using them in Mythic Plus as well. Augment runes are insanely good as well, but we will cover that more in a bit. For raiding, I would say you should, and whenever you're actually doing content that's very difficult for you, you should be using heavy desolate armor kits, which are going to give you 32 stamina in your chest. These are really min-maxy and more for efficiency, like in getting the most out of your character. Some people don't use them. I do use them because I'm a progress raider, and having as much power in my character as I can possibly get is really important to me. So make sure you have some heavy desolate armor kits if you can afford them. They're not too expensive. Shadow Core Oil is something you're going to be reapplying every hour. It just gives you roughly 1% more damage just from passive procs, so make sure you're always oiled up and always use the Shadow Core Oil. It's really cheap, so you don't really have any excuse. This is a consumable you should just be using whenever you're doing anything in a group, in my opinion. Otherwise, always make sure you have it on for raids at the very least. Now, you should be using a Spectral Flask of Power. This is the only real flask in the Shadowlands that you can use, and it just gives you 70 main stat, which is a lot of main stat and gives you a lot of damage. So definitely have one of these on your all times. Well, 4 of them, it depends how long you're obviously raiding for. If you're doing high-end Mythic Plus, you probably want to use these as well. For your food, ideally, your raid leader or your M+ leader or whoever will put down a feast, which is going to give you 20 intellect main stat. That's your best food. But if you can't get that, then 30 stat secondary food, like this 30 haste food, for example, is really good. If you should really sim your secondary stats, as I mentioned earlier. And if haste is your highest simming, then use this. If crit is your highest simming, then use the crit version, and so on. If you really want to be efficient with food buffs, then there is a little cheesy thing druids have at the moment, which they have a conduit that basically when they combat res you, you'll get 30 main stat food instead of 20 main stat. So that's a way to get a bit more main stat, which is like, what, 30 extra damage depending on how much your main stat sims for you, which is pretty good to be honest with you. But yeah, you won't see it used that often, only like for really cheesy logs, I guess. But otherwise, yeah, just have your 20 main stat food or your 30 secondary stat food. And then back to Augment Runes. Augment Runes are extremely powerful this expansion, more powerful than they've ever been in other expansions, simply because they give close to 20 main stat, and the main stat is so valuable that that's worth like 60 DPS on some fights, depending on your intellect scaling as well, which also goes up in AoE situations. So I would recommend having a few Augment Runes on you. As you can see, I have a few down here, not too many. They are really expensive at the moment. They're like 1.3k on auction house per Augment Rune, and obviously they disappear when you die, so only use these if you really have the bank to spare, or if you really feel like the damage you're going to contribute to the raid is going to make a difference. As a mage, you can prevent yourself from dying on a wipe if you were to, use your ice block when all the damage is going out, and then invis, then you can reset the boss without losing any of your buffs, so that's a way to be cost efficient with an Augment Rune. But otherwise, there's not much else to it. It's really powerful but really expensive. If you have the cash and you're willing to splash out, then use it. I would really only use it on potential kills or re-clear when I know we're not going to die as much. Otherwise, that's all for this mage guide video. There is nothing else left to talk about. Obviously, this is only the preparing your character. I've given you all the information I know about Mage right now in terms of consumables, your stats and everything else that I feel is really important. And I'm going to make the next video on your rotation and more combustion stuff, and there's not going to just be one video. There's going to be loads of videos that are going to cover different aspects of Fire Mage damage rotation, which should help you. I don't want to stuff them all into one video because it'll be way too long and there's way too much stuff to cover. So by having multiple videos about Fire Mage coming out over the next couple of days, you should be able to get a real good feel for Fire Mage, and hopefully this will help you out quite a lot. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please let me know, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see those rotation and other combustion videos I'm going to be making. I have a lot more stuff to cover as well about spinning your Stygia, which some people might not realize as a way you can gain a considerable power for a bit of a gamble at the moment. I'm going to cover lag tolerance and all sorts of things I think you'll find useful. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you in the next video.